When my sister asked me to make the showstopper design for her Peter Pan inspired nursery, there was no way I could say no. I was so excited that she asked me to make something so special for her nursery, and it was also the perfect opportunity to try out a new technique, needle felting. I started making the individual characters by first forming the body out of my bendable wire. Think stick figure. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be around the size of the doll that you are trying to create. Next, I wrapped my wire in a neutral colored yarn. This would give something for that wool to really adhere to when you first start building your base. During this part, I just kept wrapping the wire around with the yarn until I had it completely covered. I went with this neutral color so that it would more closely match the skin color of the characters. I didn't want the yarn to show through any of the thinner areas of the wool, like the arms and the legs. Once I was done wrapping, I made sure the yarn was tied tight and then moved on to the needle felting portion of this project. I made sure to choose wool that matched the color of the skin tone of the character that I was making. I took a piece and wrapped it around the wire to start to form the head. Once the wool was in place, I used the needle to secure the wool into an oval shape. Once that initial layer was secure, I added another layer of wool and did the same process with the needle to secure it in place. After the head was complete, I grabbed another small bunch of wool and began to wrap it around the arms. Once I was done wrapping it around the arms, I started by using the needle to secure it to the hands and then worked my way up to the shoulder. I repeated the same process on the other side, then continued to needle the wool until it was completely secure. I then repeated the same process for the torso and the legs. This part can seem a little tedious and feel like the wool will never stick completely into the yarn, but just keep needling and you will eventually get there. Once the body was complete, I chose a wool color that would match the pants. Can you guess which character I'm making yet? If you said Peter Pan, you'd be correct. Adding the pants to the legs was very similar to adding the wool to the rest of the body. I wrapped some of the wool around the leg and began to needle the wool into the other layer of wool from the ankle up. During this part, it's so important to make sure that your wool is secure. When I started working on the shoes, I noticed that my hands were starting to tear the wool out from where I had it already needled, and I had to go back in extra to make sure it was very secure. So that is one tip I would give you, is just to, if you think it's secure, continue to needle a little longer until it's extra secure. Next, I chose a lighter green color of wool to closely match the color of Peter Pan's shirt. This time, instead of wrapping the wool directly around the body, I started with the collar to make sure that that was placed in an accurate location before I started needling. I then worked my way around the back of the neck onto the other side so that collar was perfect and symmetrical. I then continued to needle the wool into the doll until the sleeves were formed and the wool was secure. Disney's Peter Pan is very close to the heart of my sister's family. It's actually her husband's favorite childhood movie, and I think that's adorable that he will be able to share that with his son sometime soon. Next, I started working on the lower portion of the shirt. This was a little more difficult because of those jaggedy edges you see on Peter Pan's shirt. It took a couple of tries to get it right, but I think I finally got it, and I was able to cover up my mistakes with extra layers of wool. So don't worry if you are attempting your own needle pointing and you make a mistake, it's an easy fix. And at this point, my camera died, so I wasn't able to film finishing the shirt, but as you can see here, with a little bit of magic, it's fully finished and it looks great. Next, I started the shoes. I took a brown colored wool and wrapped them around the feet and just started needling until I got the shape that I liked. This one took a little longer because of the thickness of the wire inside of the foot portion, so it was harder to get that wool in, but once I did, it did stick. It just took a little more time. I decided last minute to add a darker color of wool to show the soles of the shoes. When he flies, his toes are pointed, and I wanted to make sure that it was an obvious difference between the bottom of the shoe and the top, and I think it looked a lot better after I did that. After the shoes were done, I started working on Peter Pan's belt and the little knife that lays at his side. I think that when working on characters, it's so important to add the little details because that's really what makes them them. Like for Peter Pan, that knife played a big part because that's what he used to cut off Captain Hook's hand and feed it to the crocodile. We can't leave that part out. All that to say, I think the little details really make the character who they are, and it's important to include as many as you can. And here's another detail that I felt like was so important to get right. I originally started with a more auburn colored wool for the hair, and it just wasn't red enough, so I went back over it with a more orangey red color of wool to really get that red-headed look for Peter Pan. The process for creating the hair was very similar to how I created the jaggedy edges on the end of Peter Pan's shirt, so I felt like it was a lot easier the second time around. Once the hair was finished, I took the same color wool as I used for the pants and wrapped it around the head to form the base of the hat. I then secured the wool with my needle and continued to work with the shape until I got it to a point at the very tip to really look like Peter Pan's hat. Lastly, I added the little pointy ears, and that had to have been my favorite part of the whole doll. And then I added the little red feather to match the feather in Peter Pan's hat. And that was it. I think he turned out so cute. And of course, I couldn't leave out the other characters. After Peter Pan, I made Wendy with her little ringlet curls and her cute little bow. And then I made Michael with his bear. I loved the little detail of the bear's face. I could not leave that out of the mobile. And then John with his cute little umbrella that he brought with him. I also made a star and the second star to the right to add to the mobile. And last, but certainly not least, I made a needle felted recreation of the Jolly Roger. That's Captain Hook's ship in the movie, for all of you who aren't aware, and it was the perfect centerpiece for the final look of the mobile. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you're wondering, my sister loved her mobile. If you enjoyed this content, please like and subscribe, and if you want to watch a similar video, I did recreate Tinkerbell's house not too long ago, and that video is definitely worth the watch.